But as you know, most weeks go, always looking forward to the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for some cocktails.
That was a good sound bite.
Look at the camera for that one.
Boy, am I thirsty.
Paul is the thirstiest man I know. Welcome to Cocktological Evenings. Remember to like and subscribe below. We're joined by three amazing guests, Paul, Michelle, and Nick. For those of you who don't know, we're gonna pick a theme tonight, Mezcal. We're gonna serve 3 drinks around that theme. We're gonna talk a little bit about Mezcal, its history, and why it's special in the world of spirits today. And we're gonna have some fun conversation.
Thanks for inviting me, Dennis. I'm Paul. I'm a seeker of good food and drink, a lover of the outdoors, and a hater of slow walkers. And I'm quite thirsty.
I'm Michelle. I'm here to say don't leave.
I'm Nick, born and raised in Connecticut, which we can all agree is the best state.
It's better than New Jersey, I got nothing. We're gonna start with our first drink, the CDMX. CDMX actually stands for Ciudad de Mexico City. So,
of course.
Yeah.
Is this drink from Mexico City?
Well, the drink is from my head.
Okay. So talk to me about this, you're putting preserves in?
Yeah.
What's gonna happen in the drink to like make it so we're not gonna be doing Jello shots?
I'm gonna strain it.
All right, fair enough.
But the preserves essentially act as a sweetener. The tartness is mostly coming from the lime, a little bit from the Xoconostle. The fun part about this drink is the very fun color it becomes.
Ooh, that is a fun color.
The less fun part about this drink is how thoroughly it clogs my strainers. Cheers, everyone.
All right.
Cheers.
So what are you tasting there?
Well, off the bat, I'm getting the preserves. Yeah. And then you're getting that smokiness at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised at the smokiness at the end. Like I wouldn't think that with the tart and the sweet.
That it cuts through at the
Yeah,
end. Yeah.
but it's like it's not like when you drink like where like it's all just smoke and all you're tasting is smoke.
Right. Like you smell and you're smelling that smoke and then you kind of taste.
I mean, I smelled the smoke, but then I was surprised when it wasn't there.
A lot of people would describe Mezcal as a smoky tequila, which is, like, in a lot of ways very true, but I don't think really gets at the full story of it. Mezcal itself is actually defined between, it's got like WTO protections. It's what's called an appellation of origin spirit. So things like champagne and cognac and bourbon. These are things that can only be made in certain regions, right? Mezcal's the same way. So
you have, sorry, this is like going off record, but like not
Off record?
back to the record, previously established records. You have been on the record being annoyed at these appellation of origin things.
yeah, I'm super annoyed at Mezcal.
So you couldn't legally make Mezcal.
Absolutely not. I mean, in my house.
But could you make Mezcal?
Yeah, I've seen that online actually. In order for something to be Mezcal, the agave has to be grown and harvested and distilled in certain regions of Mexico. The other thing that's important is that it's 100% agave. Probably you've seen on tequila bottles that say 100% blue agave. That's essentially the distinction between tequila and Mezcal. Tequila must be at least 51% blue agave. Mezcal can be any kind of agave. So you get a lot of that, the difference between tequila and Mezcal right there. That the terroir of the plants, makes a big difference, but also the plants themselves make a big difference in sort of how the final spirit comes out.
This might be a dumb question.
No.
What is agave?
That's a great question. Agave, and I will talk more about this later, but like very quickly, it's a type of succulent that grows in the Americas. So I'm gonna talk first about the age. Much like tequila, Mezcal has joven or silver Mezcal, which is completely unaged. There's also aged in vidrio, which means in glass. It aged in glass for more than a year. Then there's Mezcal reposado, which means it's been aged in oak barrels for more than 2 months. Mezcal añejo, which has been aged for more than 2 years. And then there's a sort of like infused with or flavored variety. And the flavors are only specific flavors that have been actually laid out in Mexican regulations that you can actually use these flavors. Well, I was reading them over. There are some interesting flavors. Agave worm is one, and you've probably seen some Mezcal with agave worm in it. But also chicken breast and duck are flavors.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, I'm very into it.
But apparently with a chicken breast, what you do is you take a raw chicken breast and you stick it right in the column still. And as it's distilling, as the mezcal vapor is coming out of the must, it passes over the chicken breast, and it's supposed to give it a creamy, smooth finish that you can't get any other way.
I want to try the chicken breast afterwards.
No, that's the chicken breast. That's the...
No, I think you're saying you want to eat the chicken
eat the
breast.
chicken.
Oh, yeah, like a nice salad.
Yeah. Exactly.
Make some tacos.
It'd be like, you know, whenever you infuse with like fruit, right? Whatever it may be, like watermelon, you put like the vodka in it, and then if you would eat that, I feel like it's the same effect.
Yeah.
Perhaps. So you get drunk off chicken.
The dream.
Yeah. Right?
Do kind of wonder, because like that's an awesome idea, and I love the idea of getting drunk off chicken, but like it's also a raw chicken breast. And I don't know if that's really...
It's raw.
It's raw.
Oh.
So you'd have to cook it, which probably would...
But I wonder if the distillation process cooks it. Like, what's the temperature
it's
you need to
hot,
get chicken
right?
breast to? Yeah. What's the temperature you need to get chicken breast to? Like,
165?
But it's vapor.
it's vapor that's
The vapor's
passing
really
over
hot.
it. If the vapor's more than 165,
Do we have any vaping experts here?
Wow, you are so strong.
And then the deleted scene will be her handing you the bottle.
on the DVD.
So this is hot lips.
Hot lips.
Will my lips be hot after I have a sip of this?
They might be. It's a little bit spicy.
All right, cheers to
I hope you brought your Tums or whatever.
Ooh, that's just the right amount of spice for me.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
It's very good.
Yeah?
It's more jalapeno than it is spice.
It's really sweet at the end.
Where are you from originally?
Springfield, Illinois.
Nice.
The land of Lincoln, as they say.
A capital city.
It is a capital city, but you would not guess that if you ever went there.
Avocado. Guacamole is
Yeah.
very good. If you made almonds into guacamole, could you call it guacamole?
That's a great question. If I made almond guacamole, could I call it guacamole?
Define almond guacamole. What's
Yes,
your
exactly.
recipe here?
No, yeah.
This sounds disgusting. I would try it though.
What you're walking into is an ongoing debate of can you call almond milk almond? Like, can you call almond milk milk?
No. I think that milk.
Thank you. Nope, that's the right answer. You don't have to go first.
Okay.
I don't want you. No, I don't want you
That's
to. I don't want you
I'm
to
outta here,
inject
I'll see
more.
you.
What should it be called?
What, almond milk?
Yeah.
Fake? Fake milk?
Fake milk.
Fake milk.
Still has milk at the end there.
But, because it's not really milk, right? What is it? What is in it? What is in it? I have no idea.
Almonds. This is like almonds, crushed, grinded, water added, and then like sort of strained out. I'm sure there's more to the production process.
So based on that,
Yeah.
could I call coffee bean milk?
I mean,
Depends on whether you categorize it by the production
Yeah,
method
that-
or the
that's the
flavors
same.
added.
Right.
Yeah.
This is my caffeinated coffee bean milk.
Yeah. Delicious.
Yeah. I have it
And
every
you don't
morning.
need to add almond milk to it. You can just have it like regular.
I proposed at one point almond pulp.
Mmm.
I was calling it concentrated nut protein.
How many people laughed?
None, but creamy nut juice usually.
creamy
gets
nut
it.
juice seems like the clear winner here
Yeah.
for what you would call almond milk.
Actually, I would probably buy it if that's.
If it was just creamy nut juice. So we got lost in almond milk for a little bit. Let's talk about the production of mezcal.
Okay.
So, there are, as I mentioned before, 200 different kinds of agave in North America. Only about 40 to 50 of those are actually used in the production of mezcal. The different agaves you have can really influence the final product. So the first two mezcals today we had were with Espadín agave, which is sort of the most common agave. It grows to maturity in about 5 years. And a lot of mezcals you'll see are grown with Espadín agave. The last one is grown with Xocolatl, which takes a little longer to get to maturity. You'll taste the last one has a very winey flavor to it, whereas the rest of them had a much more smoky flavor.
And when you say come to maturity, you don't mean like in a cask. You mean like the plant growing to the point at which it can be harvested.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And then the way this is produced is, so first of all, jimadores are the names of the people who actually harvest the agave, which is where the name for jimador tequila comes from. They've got these coas, these long circular bladed instruments that they use when the agave is fully ripe and mature. They use to cut these long, like sword-like leaves from the agave.
Yeah, how big is this plant? Like, what are we?
Bigger than a man. Not all of them, but the blue agaves get real big. They chop these like long leaves from the plant, and then what they're aiming for is the heart at the center, the piña. They get that piña, and they bring it back to a sort of roasting facility. And you can roast it in a bunch of different ways. This is the step that really imparts that smoky flavor to a mezcal. Traditionally, it's done in underground pits. Could also be done in stone masonry ovens. Could theoretically be done in your home oven, but I think that's probably not gonna come out as good.
And is illegal, as we learned.
It really depends what you do afterwards.
Sure.
Once you've roasted the agave, you mash it, however you want to get it into little bits, and you throw it in to ferment into like in a wort or a must, right? Or a mosto. Once it's fermented, you then distill that twice, and you have a silver tequila, or a silver mezcal. And so I mentioned before, there are two different ways to classify mezcal. One of them is by aging and the flavors added to it. The second way is right around the production process. So there's basically three different levels you can think of it. There's mezcal. If something has the label mezcal with nothing after it, then you can use a lot of the modern production processes that are available. Then there's mezcal artesanal. And that means it needs to be baked in a stone masonry oven. There are some other rules around it, but that's the real big one. And then there's mezcal ancestral. And if you've got a mezcal ancestral, you know that what you've got has been like, it's real hardcore early ways of doing this. It can only be distilled in a clay still. The actual hearts have to be crushed by a large stone block called a tahona, and it crushes the agave. So like, that's how you know you've got the really traditional producers.
Could you genetically engineer like a agave plant that combined all these different flavors from different agaves?
Could I?
Yeah.
I definitely couldn't.
What is it? Wait, is this a Frankenstein plant that we're talking about?
Yeah, like where like they graft together an orange tree and an apple tree and they will grow as one tree, but parts of it will fruit differently.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
this is a real thing that happens.
I didn't know if it combines into some superfruit.
No, wouldn't that be delightful though?
I would love that.
I was thinking.
Because people say, you know, apples, oranges. I say, hey, we just put them together.
What is that?
Creme de cacao.
Is this the fancy one?
Creme de cacao is tricky because most of them are bad.
Was it at the place up on the Red Line?
It was at batch 13.
Plug for batch 13. I want a discount. They actually have a great selection, well, predominantly whiskey. And they have one with spelt, and it is so good. I don't know what it is about it. It's just super smooth. No one else is really like making a whiskey with spelt. So. Do you think it's actually a front?
For?
I don't know. They seem very like mafia type people.
Maybe they're particularly well sourced for a front, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'd think a front would just be like, nah.
But they have to keep up, you know.
Appearances by providing excellent customer
Yes,
service, then I'm
exactly.
fine with it. I'm good with this setup. Who knows who they're colluding with?
Right.
All
Nice.
the local distillers across the country.
This is the Call Your Grandmother Already. It is Toba la Mezcal with Marie Brizard creme de cacao, some mole bitters, and lemon juice. And it's called that because I was procrastinating calling my grandmother when I came up with it. No, put it back.
Apologies all around. What is the process normally like when you're inventing a new cocktail? How many iterations do you go through? How much bad cocktail do you have before you nail the...
I've had some bad cocktail. Anywhere, that wasn't even meant to be like that. It generally starts with a concept, and that concept might be inspired by like a line in a book or in a movie, or it could be something entirely different. It could be just sort of like the idea of using creme de cacao and mezcal together. And then I sort of like look at my bar, figure out what I've got on hand, and like play in my head with the flavors, and then put them together and see what happens.
All right, so this is Call Your Grandma Already.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
So what are you getting there?
Just smoothness.
Yeah.
I'm getting just smoothness. It tastes almost like a not tart lemon drop. Does that make any sense?
Oh.
Yeah.
Like not overly...
There's almost no tartness.
Right, yeah. I think it kind of somehow cancels out itself.
And that makes sense. I mean, there's a little bit of lemon juice in this drink, I guess, but I think a lot of what you're getting is that peel, giving you the.
Yeah, I mean, I still taste the smokiness, or like a little bit of smokiness. Not as much as the other mezcal, though.
Do you get what I mean when I say that this one's a little winey? Like it feels almost like a white wine.
Oh, okay,
It feels like a pisco.
Yeah.
Like that's what I think of, which is like a very because it's from grapes. It's a very wine adjacent liquor. That's what this tastes like to me. And I was expecting between the mole and the creme de cacao for this to be like, I don't know, have some like kind of like not chocolatey necessarily, but yes, but like some sickly sweet thing, and this is not that at all.
Definitely originally thought of this as a dessert cocktail, and then when it came together, I was like, not quite, but I like what I did with this.
I would have this with dessert, but
Sure. Also, like, I would love like a cereal milk gin.
ooh.
Okay, so you're one of those people that drink the milk after you eat the cereal?
Is it almond milk?
No.
I drink it as I'm eating the cereal. I make sure to get all the milk out, and then I eat the very wet but not mushy cereal
So
afterwards.
there are people that they eat the cereal. They're done. Cereal gone.
This one, you're.
And then you just sip.
I mean, not all of it. Like, if it's Kashi, no. But if it's
Right.
Lucky Charms, then sure.
Let me run this one by
Sugar
you.
milk.
There's
Yeah.
people,
Extra sugar milk.
Exactly.
there's people who pour the cereal in
Oh my god.
and then pour the milk over the top.
Wait. I'm sorry.
Hold up.
You mean the normal way?
No.
Say that again?
Hold on.
Hold on.
This is about to get buck fucking wild.
And I'm not even with this next part.
hope we're
Because
wrong.
then
There's a third part. Shit's gonna get crazy.
there's people.
I might need another cocktail.
There's people who pour the milk in and then pour the cereal over that.
And you would say those people are monsters. They're animals. You can't trust them with anything.
You haven't gotten.
But there's a third type of people.
No.
The third type of people puts the milk in the microwave.
No.
Warms the milk 10, 15 seconds.
Okay.
Warms
So
the
warm,
milk
Very warm.
and then puts the cereal on over the top. So that-
Unacceptable.
So what? Do they like go to take a nap after they have breakfast?
That was a warm milk joke. Let's just all acknowledge it and continue the conversation.
this monster is my girlfriend.
Now you're on like almond milk 2.0, and it's not gonna.
All right, we'll revisit that.
So, history of mezcal.
History of mezcal. Let's do
I
that.
wanted to know this since after the first cocktail.
Oh, okay. I'm glad I kept you all on pins and needles. So we're actually going to start a little earlier than mezcal. Not a little earlier. Let's call it 1,300 years earlier than mezcal. With Bootkit. Bootkit is a sweet, almost like thin yogurt-like beverage, which doesn't make it sound particularly appetizing.
So, like almond milk.
It's got a bit of a, it's got a bit of a sourness to it, but it's essentially fermented agave. Clocks in at somewhere between 4 to 8%, but usually on the lighter side of that. And we know that it was being produced by 200 CE, but it may have been produced sooner. We just don't have solid evidence of that. And it was used in a lot of
In and around Mexico.
in and around Mexico, yes, by the Aztecs. It was used for a lot of rituals to sort of, both for the priest to like bring him closer to gods, and by the victims to ease their suffering as they passed into the next world. We have some very light evidence of distillation going on in the Americas before the Europeans showed up, but it's not conclusive. We know that for sure it wasn't going on in a really big way.
Sorry, I apologize for interrupting. What do you mean by distillation versus what they were doing earlier?
Sure. So fermentation is what happens with beer and wine, pulque. It's where you basically take sugars and you let them sit until bacteria breaks them down into alcohol. Distillation is usually you take a fermented product, so the alcohol is already there, and then it's the process of heating and cooling it to purify that alcohol and pull more and more alcohol out of it. So the alcohol evaporates before water does. And so the alcohol rises to the top, you cool the alcohol, let it collect in a different vat somewhere, and that process of distillation gives you things like rum, tequila, mezcal, etc., right? So Europeans show up in the 1500s. They do two things. First, they immediately plant grapes to make wine. But then they start to look around for other things that they can make alcoholic beverages out of, and they settle on agave, and they start making what they call mezcal wines, but which is mezcal. The Spanish government, Philip II, pretty quickly bans the production of wine in the Americas. Mezcal becomes an even bigger industry. At this point, it's important to note, there's no evidence of any kind of fermented product of any alcohol north of like the southwest region of the United States before the Europeans showed up, which is interesting. Both because alcohol is delicious and why wouldn't you produce it, but also because like alcohol is what happens when you let sugar sit out for a while and then bacteria goes at it. So I kind of don't, like I'm sure that there was something up there, but we don't know about it. That's just a personal thought. You maybe-
I do have part of an answer. The first is that they had more like herb-related drugs that they would take instead because in especially pre-European contact cultures, the use of alcohol derivatives or like hallucinatory drugs was for religious rituals. Right. So it was restricted to a specific set of people and it wasn't a recreational thing. So there wouldn't have been a large-scale production of it regardless. And in the like North America group of large number of group of cultures, most of them were nomadic. And so they tended to follow herds and go from like plains to mountains, for example, in where like there was a couple adobe cultures, and I don't know about them, but for the nomadic ones, they wouldn't have had a good way to transport anything that was fermenting. And so they would have relied more on the actual like plant derivatives that they could bring with them in a dried pouch.
That's interesting.
Fascinating.
Okay. That makes a little more sense as like why it just never sort of developed as a thing.
How about the very important Northeast tribes like the Algonquins or the Pequots or those in and around the Connecticut River Valley, for instance?
For instance.
I think you'd have to look into the Iroquois Nation for that and see what their policies were.
That was a brief detour, but at this point, we're talking late 1500s, there's not really much of a distinction between mezcal and tequila. These are both words in use, but they're sort of interchangeable. In 1600, Don Pedro Sánchez de Tagle, Marquis de Alta Maria y Caballero de la Orden de Calatrava.
Wait, who?
Don Pedro Sánchez de Tagle, Marquis de Alta Maria y Caballero de la Orden de Calatrava, begins in Jalisco, the very first tequila factory. He's not the first to produce tequila, but he's the first to sort of systematize and commercialize its production. From here, we can see sort of two classes of production begin to grow up. There's the very legal, you've gotten a charter from the king of Spain, and you're on solid ground. This is mostly done by like noblemen, clergy, that sort of thing. Then there's also the sort of homegrown, produced in small native villages, production of mezcal for local use. In 1785, before the production of wine was banned to promote wine importation, apparently mezcal started to eat into the wine profits because in 1785, the production of all alcoholic products of any kind is banned to promote wine imports. And at that point, it sort of drives the production of mezcal underground, both figuratively and literally, because this is when we think that underground smoking of the mezcal happened. I mean, obviously, if you're gonna smoke something, that's gonna produce a very big cloud that the authorities could come and get you for. But if you do it in an underground pit, then you can sort of hide that a little bit. So we think that actually the particular smoky flavor of mezcal grew up right around then. From 1850 to 1900, a bunch of steps started to be taken to distinguish tequila from mezcal. The first thing that happened is that a couple of regions within Mexico started to be, recognized as the best region to grow agave. And those became demarcated as the tequila regions. The second thing that happened is that the blue agave became recognized as the best kind of agave for the production of tequila specifically.
So tequila was like originally like the premier thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Tequila was like the fancy kind, right? And tequila also began to be baked in above ground pits, where they had for a while, everything had been baked in below ground pits. Tequila comes above ground. And that's why-
I was gonna say, like, is it a political, like socio-political difference? Like people who are of European descent wanted to get more into this, and so they decided to classify a particular type of agave?
Oh, absolutely. The big producers, I mean, throughout this entire thing, the big producers are of European descent. Like, They have owned the legal production of mezcal from the very beginning, and so it's like I think that's probably very true that certain European producers decided they wanted to carve out a special branding space for themselves and like give their brand ambassadors more power in the local villages, and so like call it tequila instead of mezcal and like really distinguish this thing, you know? Good for SEO, everything.
Fascinating. As tequila as like this is not of the indigenous people.
Yeah, also the Jesuits, I think, were the Jesuits really big in, like, earlier in the production of mezcal? Like, because they would have the schools, but then they would be using them to essentially produce mezcal.
I don't know. The clergy absolutely were huge in the early production. And you can see this still today, like the effects of this, right? Because tequila is a worldwide brand. Everybody knows it. In 2015, 230 million liters of tequila were produced and distributed all over the world. Mezcal, for a long, long time, was really only a small Mexican village thing. It was drunk at like, you know, rituals like coming of the rain and births and deaths and things like that. Some people had it for like, you know, wedding ceremonies, but for a long, long time, it was very much like the drink of the poor people, the drink of the villages. It fell out of favor even in Mexico among the like working class. And in that same year when 230 million liters of tequila were produced, 2.4 million liters of mezcal were produced. So you've got, you know, 1/100th. Am I doing that right?
And this
Yes,
is
1/100th the size, basically, of the industry.
This is 2015.
Yeah, this is 2015. Mezcal is still, I mean, you see it coming back in cocktail bars, like to sip neat or to like have a fancy cocktail with. It's coming back, but it's still very, very small compared to larger tequila production. And this is why, I mean, I mentioned like in February 20, like a little over a year ago, they set up specific rules for mezcal. They had rules for mezcal before. They were very like flimsy. But like now that Mexico is seeing that production ramp up and seeing the popularity increase, they're setting up more rules about like mezcal, mezcal ancestral, mezcal artesanal, all of that.
Have those rules existed for tequila already?
Yeah, tequila's got a whole nom. It's called norma something.
Alcohol as a tool of racialization is very interesting to me.
The same thing happened in beer.
Say more.
So,
You said that as if I would know what you meant, and I have no idea what you mean.
so beer was something that people could do at home, right? Because until sanitation systems got put into cities, you couldn't drink water.
Oh,
And wine was something that was an investment, and generally you had to buy.
Right.
But so especially in the United States, when we had like settlers coming over in 1700s, people moving into the mountains and such, they could take a portion of their harvest and make their own beer. And then they would use that to trade for furs and other provisions. And because they were like hundreds and hundreds of small craft breweries, basically, they would experiment with different flavors that they would add, either juniper. It's only been recently that the craft breweries have been able to come back and actually demonstrate that they can hold the market.
Because of Ronald Reagan?
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta give him that.
To Ronald Reagan.
No.
The one thing he did that we all agree was okay.
I mean, like, specifically, right, the idea of, like, the government of Spain and Mexico specifically supporting tequila as a way to, like, further segment out the working class who drink tequila versus the indigenous people of Mexico who drink mezcal, right? It's like, it's the indentured servitude of, like, yeah, sorry, we're gonna get real for a second. But yes, right?
Yep.
The story of how mezcal got big is interesting. Like, it was basically an American who discovered it, loved it, and decided to set up his own mezcal distillery, Del Maguey. But I mean, this is how it sucks, but like this is how everything happens, right? Like, the moment that you can make money, the rich and powerful are going to take control. So for our sort of final send-off, I want everyone to take a shot. And I think the way we're gonna do this, we're gonna pick one shot from any of the bottles we've got here. And so, Nick, what would you like to try?
I would like this one.
The Licor de Xoconostle.
Yes.
Michelle, would you like to try?
I have a question about the jalapeno one.
Yeah, go for it.
Is it good by itself?
It is, if you infuse a bad liquor, what you get is a bad infusion. So yes, the liquor itself is good. I like it by itself, but it is pretty spicy.
Yeah, I'll try the jalapeno.
The jalapeno infused. All right.
I too am gonna do the jalapeno infused.
I'm going to go ahead and go with the Vita Mezcal.
So are we shooting this or are we sipping this?
I was thinking we're shooting this.
Yeah? Can I get...
We're shooting. Cheers.
Cheers. That's a spicy one.
That was like drinking caramel.
I didn't get all
That was like if you took jalapeno juice and you put it in a shot glass. Very good. I liked it a lot.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, Dennis.
Beautifully done.
I'm Paul Jamali, and I support this message.
That is, I would never say that on camera.
You can use it for wherever you want. I already signed the release.
Remember to like and subscribe below. If you want to hear more about events and drink experimentations, connect with us at cocktologicalevenings.com or at Cocktological Evenings on Instagram.